Hello again, and my name is Mr. Kiefler. I teach at Victoria School of the Arts. And today we're finishing up our series on performing heightened text with a discussion over antithesis. Now, antithesis is a fantastic thing to finish with, but in fact, it is probably the thing that you will want to start with. And the reason I didn't start with it in this series is because the other tools that you discovered, like punctuation and phrasing, are actually going to help support your understanding of antithesis. But if you do understand antithesis, then everything else in the piece will fall into place in terms of your understanding and performing of the text. But before we get into it, just to recap, the curriculum that we have been covering over this relates to using vocabulary and terms unique to the theater, utilizing rehearsal experiences to improve stage performance, and lastly, explaining and applying the use of an actor's book in relation to the complexity of the role. Of course, real-world connections, because heightened language comes in so many forms. Generally, we're going to understand and appreciate poetic language even more, which includes songs, poems, and of course, Shakespearean text. This is also going to help with the analysis of text. This is great for Shakespearean text or heightened text in general, but actually any text that you look at from now on, if you use these skills, you'll find all of these ideas used, maybe in slightly different ways, but it still will help your analysis of those texts. And finally, clarity of the written word. If you would like to write things down, make sure that you have these clear ideas. As far as antithesis goes, the easiest example is when you're writing argumentative papers. You need to have two clear ideas, the one that you believe and the one that might be the opposite of that idea. So we'll see how antithetical ideas or opposite ideas or comparative ideas really help strengthen an argument or make something more interesting. Okay, so as far as Eminem goes, is our final time looking at Eminem. In this portion of his piece, there is indeed an antithetical idea. He asks if you have one opportunity, one shot, all this stuff, to seize everything you wanted, would you capture it or just let it slip? So there's a couple of things that are worth noting. One of them is that there's an or there, and then obviously there's two different ideas surrounding that or. Would you capture it? Would you take the opportunity? Would you seize it or just let it slip? So Shakespeare or Eminem or any writer is going to present ideas as opposites, of course. So inherently, when you have antithetical ideas, you usually will have them as written antithesis. So there's many different forms of antithesis that you can do. The writers provide you with one form of antithesis, which is verbal. When you say this, is the idea opposite? Capturing it versus letting it slip. Literally have something in your hand, and do you capture it or do you let it slip out of your hand? And so that is written as an antithesis. But as an actor or a performer, you could actually physically show this as an antithetical idea by holding, here's your moment, and here's your hand. I'm just going to make this a bit bigger. Would you capture it or just let it slip? I don't know. My point is that you can represent this physically with your actor body as well. And so the thing about antithesis is it has all the other ideas wrapped up in it. It has the phrasing, the big ideas. It uses the punctuation. You note here that it actually comes at the end of the entire sentence, so it's incredibly important. So antithetically speaking, the big idea for Eminem's entire piece here, the biggest idea, the most important thing is, if it comes to you, are you going to do something or not? And we probably can notice it here as well. So here's one idea. This is how he's feeling, which actually is wrapped up in this idea. He's nervous. It's talking about what he's looking like, the fact that he's thrown up on a sweater, he's nervous, but on the surface he looks calm and ready to drop bombs. But he keeps on forgetting. So there's all these comparisons. What he wrote down, the whole crowd goes so loud he opens his mouth, but the words don't come out. He's choking, how everybody's joking now. The clock's run out, time's up, over, blah. So hopefully one of the things that you're going to notice in the obvious antithetical ideas is that these sort of transitions, or I guess you could call them leverage points. So like if antithesis is a teeter-totter, these words like but, or sometimes and, lots of words like that are sort of the fulcrum point which your antithetical argument rests on. And that's going to be one major way to identify antithetical arguments, is words like that. Because first it says he's nervous, but he looks calm. But he forgets what to do. So he's calm, but he forgets what to do. So he's actually not calm, it's just horrible. And then the rhythm picks up and everything's horrible. Blah, everybody's laughing at him. So let's take this forward into a Shakespearean piece. So immediately we have some pretty obvious antithetical ideas, but soft. He jested scars, but never felt a wound. So again, I would go through and try to find those transition words before you even try to find any antithetical arguments. So let's just go through. It is the east, and Juliet is a sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon, who is already sick with paling grief that thou, her maid, art far more fair than she. Be not her maid, since she is envious. Her vestal livery is but sick and green, and none but fools do wear it. Cast it off. It is my lady, oh, it is my love, oh, that she knew she were. She speaks, yet says nothing. What of that? Her eye discourses, I will answer it. I am too bold, 'tis not to me she speaks. Two of the fairest stars in all the heaven, having some business to entreat her eye to twinkle in the sphere till they return. Okay, so that's plenty for now. We could keep going, but I think as we'll see, there's not really much else that's obviously antithetical. So, well, we know from this first piece, he just set scars that never felt a wound. For one thing, that's Romeo is taking his ideas outside of Juliet's courtyard. He's worried about Mercutio, and then all of a sudden, he sees some light and he says, but wait, what's that? So you could argue that these two are antithetical ideas because they are opposites of what he's thinking about, what he's caring about. And antithesis can relate to a lot of things, but the point is that when you're performing these two antithetical ideas, you make a different physical, verbal, vocal, emotional choice. And so he just set scars and never felt a wound could be perhaps Romeo is he's a little bit angry here, and then here he's curious. Now you don't perform, especially if you're following a Stanislavski method, and that's a totally different video. You don't perform emotions, but you can understand who he's talking to and what he wants from that person. So generally, he just said scars and never felt a wound. Romeo is talking to Mercutio, and he is angry at his friend. So what he wants his friend to go away. That's what he wants from him. Versus, what light through yonder window breaks? He is looking at a window, and what he's speaking to that doorway, and what he wants is for it to reveal what is behind it. Versus, it is the east and Juliet is the sun. Again, another great comparison. Juliet is the sun. It is the east. So we have that and to help us denote that. And it is the east. So this is what he was talking about before, the window. And Juliet is the sun. Well, guess what? He's going to care a lot more about Juliet. So I'd say in this one, the antithetical ideas could be that Juliet is exciting, and the east is, I don't know, just factual or stationary. So Great way to spell stationary. The one of the important points here is they are definitely opposite, or they're being compared. It is that, and Juliet is this, but they're not necessarily opposites. And antithetical ideas don't need to be opposite. They're strongest when they're opposite. They're clearest when they're opposite. I might draw your attention to a very famous Shakespearean piece, to be or not to be. Those are opposite ideas. To do something or not to do something, very clearly opposite, versus a comparison between two things. For example, arise, fair sun is the next thing. Arise, fair sun. He likes the sun. It wants to arise. And kill the envious moon. So one thing is going up, and the other thing is going down. You're going down, the moon. You're going down. So again, if you perform all of this just the same, flatly, he jests at scars that never felt a wound, but soft what light through yonder window breaks. Well, that doesn't sound like a different idea. He jests at scars that never felt a wound, but soft what light through yonder window breaks. We understand there's a shift. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. So again, playing those difference. And one of those things I would offer is the qualities that make things different, especially if they use the exact same, the exact same wording except for one difference. It is the, Juliet is the, well, what's the thing that's different? The east is boring. It's just there. It just exists. The sun is radiant and glorious, and it provides us with light and energy. And again, you as an actor can just have an opinion about the east or the sun. The east, for whatever reason, is one of my least favorite directions. I just don't like the east. So I think the east is kind of bland and lame. The fair sun, well, Shakespeare tells you how to feel about the sun. He tells you it's fair, it's beautiful. Envious moon, well, yeah, of course you should kill something that's, well, not in our day and age, but the idea of something being envious, well, it's not worth your time. The moon is envious. It's, envy is such a worthless emotion. So forget the moon. Again, her vestal liveries but sick and green. This is a less obvious one, and none but fools do wear it. The comparison is, she has a nasty clothing for you to wear, and only fools do wear it. And the comparison that I would offer Shakespeare is giving to you is, you deserve better clothes, and you're not a fool. And that's actually not said directly. And so what's happening here with this "and" is the antithetical idea isn't actually being verbalized. It is an intellectual idea, which you can make emotional and you can make clear by the way that you emphasize the words. So for example, and none but fools do wear it, cast it off. And by emphasizing fools, the antithesis is that Juliet is not a fool. So you might say, and none but fools do wear it, and paraphrase the idea that you're not a fool, cast it off. And this is where your paraphrasing becomes extra helpful. And you'll also note, none but fools do wear it. Fools will be one of those words in your phrasing that is emphasized, and probably also in other elements of your analysis. One of the fun ones here, we start to get into some comedy. She speaks, yet says nothing. What of that? Well, that's a weird idea. She speaks, yet says nothing. So the way you perform that could add elements of comedy or elements of curiosity. She speaks, yet says nothing. What of that? Wow, who is this interesting woman who says things but doesn't speak them out loud, right? So again, depending on what your take of Romeo is, as you perform that character, you can interpret what these antithetical ideas are. There are also some secret antithetical ideas that are not made clear by transitional or those fulcrum words. For example, her eye discourses, I will answer it, I am too bold. That is an antithetical idea. He's like, I'm going to go talk to her. The idea finishes, and then a new idea starts, I am too bold. And sometimes an idea ending will also give you a clear idea of an antithetical idea. Again, and the reason that's comedy is that he immediately changes his mind. So you could potentially play that as really, really quick transition, despite being two main ideas, or you could play it as pathetic to help the audience, realize, oh, this Romeo character is desperately in love. So that's Antithesis. Now, again, I understand that this is a bit of a complex idea because there are some secret ones, like her eye discourses, I will answer it. Or we start to go into two of the fairest stars in heaven having some business do entreat her eye. That's the comparison between him and the stars. And then he goes to, what if they were there? They in her head. Her eyes were there. So that's antithetical. Even though there's no word that suggests it, he's saying, what if this replaced that? So if you're having a hard time identifying antithetical ideas or breaking down the argument, your understanding, then you go back to the work you've already done with paraphrasing, phrasing, punctuation, rhythm, all of that work, and it'll start to reveal what is actually being said, and then that you can use to start to draw comparisons. So that's generally speaking antithesis. And what I'd like you to do is, using your sonnet, just note the antithetical ideas. And then for yourself, you can extend your understanding of antithesis. You can start to give the different performative value. So start performing differently and making clear physically, vocally, emotionally how these things are different. Use different pitches, use different, like you're crouching versus standing, or you're holding something versus you're letting it go, to show these antithetical ideas. You don't want to be demonstrative, but if you are doing it to support the text, that's different. So often, people perform Shakespeare and they demonstrate the gist of the idea, the paraphrase of the idea, rather than actually communicating the idea itself. And by using antithesis, it actually helps you identify the real ideas and how they're working together. And then so by antithetically performing these ideas verbally and physically, you're not being demonstrative, you're just supporting what's already in the text, and therefore supporting the audience's understanding and overall enjoyment of this piece. And of course, as we talked about at the beginning, you're adding to the nuance of this performance, the complexity of this role. So quickly, a reminder, antithesis is a comparison of two things, but sometimes they're the opposite, not always. So if you're not finding any opposites, that doesn't mean there's not antithetical ideas in your piece. You can also use phrasing, paraphrasing, punctuation, and your rhythm skills to discover antithesis.